Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with Center for Change. My name is Carrie Jacobson. I am one of the outreach specialists here at Center for Change and will be the host of the webinar. I wanted to let you know just a couple of things before we get started. Attendees are welcome to submit questions in the questions pane located in the toolbar, and the presenter will try and get to a few questions at the end of the presentation. A copy of the post-test is in the handouts pane in the toolbar. Feel free to view or print the test questions for review during the webinar. However, the test must be taken online to receive CE credit. A copy of the PowerPoint is also in the handouts pane in the toolbar as well. At the end of the presentation, the webinar program will ask attendees to complete an evaluation. Also, about an hour after the presentation ends, attendees will receive a follow-up email with instructions regarding taking the post-test and receiving a certificate of attendance. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to have Dr. Nicole Hawkins introduce herself, and we'll get going here in just a minute. I'm going to switch out the PowerPoint, so be patient. Thank you. Okay, you're good.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you again, like Carrie said, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you guys. I know everyone's super busy. Anyone in the eating disorder industry has been very busy since COVID has started, that's for sure. So for those of you that don't know me, I'll brief introduction. My name's Dr. Nicole Hawkins. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I've been here at the Center for Change for 22 years. I run all the body image groups, and I've been in various roles here, but the last 2 years I've been the CEO. And then a couple other things, which you're going to learn a lot about me today, is I've also been recovered myself for 29 years. So I had anorexia, I had bulimia, and then I had binge eating disorder. And then I always like to say my son had ARFID. So I kind of know a little bit about every eating disorder right now. And so we'll be talking about that. And my presentation today is like my favorite topic, and it's really why patients get better. And we're going to talk about recovery. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of the overview of what we're going to discuss. So first, like I said, why clients get better, what my clients have personally taught me about recovery, and then I'm going to talk about 10 therapeutic interventions to support recovery. So whether you're a clinician, dietitian, or someone in recovery yourself or entering recovery, this is going to be for you. So I hope to kind of cover all areas, and hopefully you can find one little thing that fits for you. So this image kind of explains how I viewed recovery. I literally felt like I was on this little teeny cliff, and I was terrified. And the thought of recovery was literally overwhelming. And I didn't know if people really got better. And you have to remember, when I had my eating disorder, it was in the 90s. I'm getting a little old. It was in the 90s, and the view back then is that people don't get better. So a part of me was like, why even try to get better? Because people don't get better. So I thought, can I even recover? And then what if I fail, or what if I fall? I'm a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist now, but I was a perfectionist, and I was terrified to do something wrong. And people always told me, you just need to trust and have hope. And I'm like, hope? What is hope? And so this is literally from the dictionary. This is what hope means. A feeling of expectation or desire for certain things to happen. A feeling of trust. Well, as most of you know that work in this industry, by the time clients come to us, they don't have much hope. and they definitely don't have any trust. And maybe some difficult things have happened to them, or they've had a lot of failure, and so they don't trust the process. They don't trust that they can get better. And so really helping them learn what hope is and giving them a sense of hope, I think as clinicians becomes one of our most important things. And if you look at the research on hope, we know that hope is really important in recovery. We know that it enhances people with medical problems in the hospital. They do better if they have hope, especially if they have life-threatening illnesses. If you look at the cancer research, we really see that individuals that have more hope do better. It also helps with pain and blocking pain sensations. And we know that lack of hope is greatly related to depression and anxiety levels in the recovery process. So hope is important, right? And so I do like Snyder's model of hope, and I like to explain this to my patients, because if you look at hope this way, it's very simple to explain to our clients, and it's very simple for them all to get some hope. And so first, they need to overcome barriers that have prevented us from achieving goals. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today and helping clients look at what's gotten in the way. Especially, I love working with clients, believe it or not, that have relapsed, because then we can really look at those barriers. What's prevented them? And then two, setting realistic and relevant, I couldn't say the word for a minute, goals. So I'm going to be talking about 10 little parachutes that give our patients a little bit of hope. Maybe we put all those parachutes together and we make one big one, but maybe for some clients, only a couple of these are going to fit. And so that's what we're going to be talking about is building this model, building this parachute for them. So these are some questions I first like to explore with my clients. So look at the past. Have you had periods that were symptom-free? So were you doing well? Or when you first left treatment, if you were doing well, how come? Or if you had some periods where you were really thriving, what was different? What was going on in your life? And then second, have you overcome challenges in your past? So really looking at the obstacles. I even like to ask patients, how have you gotten through COVID? This has been really hard. What have you done well? And then validating even the smallest baby steps. So I remember one of the first assignments my therapist gave me when I was working towards recovery was, Nicole, I just want you to go, and I was in college, walk around campus and make eye contact with 3 people and smile. That was a teeny baby step. But for me, that was a small thing I could do that I could actually achieve. And when we think about those measurable goals, right? And then look at the positive insights they've made. Really validate those insights they're making about their eating disorder and their recovery. And if you feel frozen or stuck, what are some small goals you could set to move forward today? So we're going to be talking about those small daily goals and what's going to happen. And then number 6 is probably my favorite, and I use this one a lot. If our patients don't have any hope, I want them to borrow hope. So I have given out all my hope rocks, but this is a trust rock. And I usually like them a little smaller because I like my patients to be able to fit them in their pockets. But I keep in my office like a little bowl full of hope rocks. So if a patient doesn't have hope, or if a patient doesn't have trust, I can give them some. And I can let them know I'm on this journey with you, and I have hope in your recovery. You can borrow hope from me. And I want you to trust me as well, because I'm here to support you, and I'm going to be one of the members of your team. So this is how I approached eating disorder recovery. Remember that nice view I showed of the cliff? And well, this was me. I was terrified to trust. I had little hope that things would get better. Could I be a better person? I had hurt a lot of people that I cared about. I felt alone. And so I needed some little parachutes, or literally I had to take a leap of faith and just hope that my future would get better. So this is how I approached it. This is if you were to jump out of a plane. Now, any of you that know me know that I am horribly anxious and a fearful person. I probably would never, ever, ever jump out of a plane, even with a parachute on, unless my life depended on it. But the truth is when I got to the point of needing to recover, my life depended on it. And so we're going to talk about, for so many of our patients, their life depends on it at this point. We're going to help them build a parachute that's going to support them, knowing that they're at this point where they've got to get better. And so I just put for fun all the things that it takes to like pack and build a parachute. It's a pretty overwhelming process. That's why we have to plan for it. So I'm going to give you the 10 things now that I ask my patients to plan for in recovery. So how I collected these 10 things was based on a research project I started several years ago, and I've just built on it. So right now I have about 200 participants that have participated in this research. And my research is a little biased. I will put that out there right now. So I haven't published it yet, but it's all Center for Change patients. And they have all emailed me or have done hand surveys when they've been at an alumni event. And then I've incorporated some other areas of research. So when we talk about the sample size, just please know that it's Center for Change patients. So it is a little biased sample. So the average length of time in recovery was 33 months. The average age of the patient was 25 years old, and all of them had received 24-hour care. So we're going to go over the 10 factors that patients identified as the most important, and think of each one as a little parachute. And each one of these little factors can be so important. If we put them all together, though, they're very, very powerful. And you may need to substitute some, right? They might not all fit for your clients or for yourself if you're someone in recovery right now. So as I go through this list, the top 3 were literally in order of how patients ranked them. As we go down, though, it's kind of, a mixed bag. And so I ranked them, but just know the top 3 were how it was ranked. So the number 1, the first one that patients identified that was most important in their recovery journal was having consistency and structure. So having a schedule. And I don't mean that I'm following it out minute by minute, but what I require of all my clients is that they are going to write out kind of a daily schedule. So they're going to actually write out a time frame. I'm going to eat breakfast between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. They're going to actually write down what that's going to look like. So for here, we don't do an exchange program. We do kind of a recovery directed, like an intuitive eating style. So they may know that I have to have a main and 2 sides for breakfast. So they're going to write that out. They're going to write out who's going to be there to support them. And if they don't have a support person, maybe that they're going to take a picture and send it to the dietitian. Dietitians, you will learn, if you're listening, that you are my favorite part of the treatment team, that they'll take a picture and send that to their dietitian, but they're going to write it out. They're also going to look at the most vulnerable times of their day. So when do they struggle the most? So for me personally in recovery, that was from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. I had to develop a structure that meant for me, I was going to the library, I was going to bookstores, anywhere than being in my apartment, because if I was alone in my apartment, I would engage in behaviors. So looking at my most vulnerable times, so I'm writing down my meal plan, I'm writing down my meal support plan, I'm writing down my hydration plan. So I make my patients even map out how much fluids they're going to get and how much water they're going to get. And I don't have time to go in it right now, but the research on hydration in the brain and brain function and recovery is critical. So having them look at that. I have them write down a movement plan. Notice that I didn't say exercise plan. So really looking at supportive movement and working with their therapist and their team and their dietitian on what that looks like. Their sleep hygiene plan, critical. So I like them to kind of put times that they're going to go to bed, when they're going to wake up, and on the weekend I give them a little bit of a change, but this becomes critical. I like to use my daughter as an example. Now, luckily my daughter does not have an eating disorder, but she is in college and she sometimes stays up till 2 in the morning, and then she wakes up at like 10 or 11. She's probably up by now, Utah Mountain Standard Time. So, but that's, I guess, okay for her. I'm still not a fan of it, but for my clients, I'm not okay with that. Because when do they eat breakfast? Do they just skip breakfast and do they go to lunch? So I like them to kind of write out this structure and this plan. Write out a plan for substances, caffeine, nicotine, cannabis, alcohol. I like my patients to make some commitments. I ideally would like them to stay away from these substances in recovery, at least the first year. But again, if they're unwilling, we're going to write out a plan for this. So they're writing this plan out. Now, for a lot of our clients, the whole process of writing it out, they're highly resistant, because that's a place I could fail. If I write it down and I don't do it, it's a place I could fail. And so having them start writing it down, and then we're going to talk about the next parts, becomes so important with this written plan. We're going to set small, obtainable, measurable goals. One reason our clients were so successful at their eating disorder is we know that rules and setting goals they like. And they were really good at their eating disorder. They set a lot of goals and they achieved them. I always tell them, you're all pros at your eating disorder. So we need them to set recovery goals and goals that they can achieve every single day. So they're going to put their plan on paper, and then they're going to review it with their support person and their therapist. They're going to start looking at what are my 1 month goals, my 6 months goal, my 1 year goal. And then for all of my patients, no matter the age, I like them to have daily check-ins with their support person, and then a family one with the entire family or their larger support person, where they're reviewing, how did I do today? And we don't need to go through every behavior that happened, but just almost a little bit of an accountability of, this is what went well today, this is what didn't go well. So this is the first step of the process, and then we're going to go a little deeper into this writing down their plan as we get to the number 2 is honesty. So my patients have all identified honesty was one of their most important factors in getting them well. So they said being honest with myself and others, talking openly about my flaws and inabilities. And this is why group therapy can be so powerful for our patients. A lot of them enjoy group therapy. Some of them, like me, I was terrified of it. I did not want to be in group therapy. I did not want to openly talk about my flaws. I was embarrassed for people to know my behaviors. So one of the assignments I like my patients to do is they write a 10-page, I always tell them 10-page typed, doesn't have to be single page space, but I want 10 pages typed of their eating disorder auto. In this eating disorder auto, I want all the behaviors, I want all the horrible details, I want all the ways they manipulated people, they lied to people, I want all the sad stories. I want to hear about the nights they cried themselves to sleep. I want to hear about the bad parts of the eating disorder. There's 2 reasons for this. Number 1 is I want them to have a reminder in the future when they're kind of thinking, you know, my eating disorder wasn't that bad. I could just go back to a little bit of it and I'll be more in control this time. I won't let it get that bad. I want them to pull out that document. I want them to remind themselves of that pain and how hard it was. Second reason is I want them to read that document to their support team. Now we're going to get to who their support team is, but I like it to be a handful of people. And I want them to be vulnerable and be honest. Now, I usually have 2 reactions when I ask my clients to do this. Sometimes they say, no, these people will judge me. They will be mad at me. They will not like me. I could never read this to my partner, my spouse. They would never accept me again. And I said, then that's fine, but let's not say they're one of your support people if you can't be vulnerable and honest with them. The other reason I have clients resistant to read this to their team is because they don't want their team to know their behaviors because they're planning on doing those behaviors, right? We don't want to let everyone know our tricks if we're planning to keep our tricks. So I like them to be honest and just share with me their fears about doing that. So some other things with honesty. The first one is what I call the 24-hour honesty rule. So some of my clients know this rule very well. I created this rule for myself in recovery because I was such a liar. Even when I said, I am going to be honest, I am done with lying and manipulating people, I still lied. So I had a rule that if I lied or lied about a behavior or omitted the truth about a behavior, I had 24 hours to be honest about it to an accountability person. So I gave myself a loophole. I didn't have to be honest to the person I was dishonest to, but I had to be honest with my accountability person. So I like to set that, and in 24-hour care, I set that rule with my clients. And I say, hey, you can shoot me an email if you did a behavior. You can just tell me. I'm just gonna, I'll get to what I ask them to do here in a minute when they do a behavior, but they can just tell me and just be honest about it. Over time, ideally, we want to narrow that gap, right? We don't want to keep this at 24 hours. Ideally, we want every day that I'm self-correcting and I'm getting back on track and I'm being honest. But at first, that's what I did. I've had a lot of clients use that rule and it's been helpful for them. So second one, I said, pick an accountability person. I encourage them not to have it be a friend because that's sometimes a significant way to burn out a friend. It could be a therapist, it could be a dietitian. And again, for a lot of my clients, I am their accountability person. They just send me an email. It doesn't need to be an essay. I just need them to admit the behavior. So that's step one of the self-correction is I am admitting to it, I'm being honest, and hopefully I'm ending that process. So the third thing is self-correction. So if you're going to take anything out of this entire webinar today, to me personally, for my clients and for myself, this was the most critical thing for recovery. Recovery is not about being perfect. It was about, for me, self-correcting. So if I did a behavior, what is the self-correction? And I just ran a group, probably 2 weeks, with the adolescent unit. And I asked them, can you guys give me examples of self-correction? They had no idea. They had no idea what self-correction was. So then I did a training with some therapists and asked them the same question. What are eating disorder self-corrections? They had no idea. So I thought, well, here's the problem. If therapists don't know what it is, how are our clients supposed to know? So when you think of a self-correction, you need to think of, if a client purges, what is the self-correction? If they binge, what is the self-correction? If they restrict, if they over-exercise, if they're dishonest, if they self-harm, if they don't drink their water, whatever it is the behavior is, I work with my clients to come up with the self-correction. I usually like it to be client-driven at first, where they're really going to come up with what they're willing to do. And then we explore it, we see how it's working, and then I can help them and I can assist them. So for example, if a patient binges, I love to use this one because my clients struggle with this one. So let's say I've followed my meal plan throughout the day, I've eaten dinner, and then I binge. What is the self-correction? So one of my clients says, you go exercise. No, that's not the self-correction, right? Maybe the self-correction is I sit down and I do a behavioral chain analysis and I figure out what led to that binge, or did I really follow my meal plan? Did I restrict? Maybe a self-correction is I have to do my chain analysis. I have to be honest with my accountability person. And the next day I have to eat breakfast. I have to stay on track. So again, having them, and I like a lot of it to be written assignments where they're sitting down, they're looking at the behavior, they're learning from it, they're moving forward. That way, if we look at recovery that way, you're always progressing. So learning from their mistakes. Some of my patients keep a daily honesty log just to kind of look at what's going on with them and how they're doing with that. So again, just helping them think. So when a patient emails me and says, Nicole, I purged last night, I will always reply and say, thank you so much for letting me know. What was the self-correction, or do you need help coming up with a self-correction? So that we're not stuck in the behaviors, we're moving forward, we're self-correcting. So the number 3 is reaching out for support. So this is what some of my patients have told me. Dwelling on past mistakes, this is why they isolate. Assuming everyone is judging me, guilt and embarrassment about my behaviors, isolation and loneliness, I will never be good enough, and then kind of loss of integrity and dishonesty. So what does reaching out for support mean? It means, number 1, that our patients need to have an entire treatment team. So if you're an outpatient therapist and you are treating individuals with eating disorders, you need to be working with a dietitian, you need to be working with a medical provider. So I will not work with outpatients unless they are working with a full team. That is critical because we can't do this work on our own. But for all the dietitians listening, I always like to say the dietitians are the first to get voted off the island. My patients are like, well, insurance doesn't cover them. And I already know everything anyway. They're not going to tell me anything new. I already know what I'm supposed to do. No, that dietitian is a critical piece of the treatment team. I think we have 10 of them here working at the Center for Change. They're critical and they're very involved in all of the care. So please make sure your clients are seeing a dietitian. I understand with the private pay, sometimes that can be hard. That's why for a lot of my clients, I always recommend, hey, if you can do IOP level of care, it's all inclusive, right? It's all paid for. The next one is the medication management. I like to say the adolescent 6-week rule. I don't know if you guys have heard of this one. So most of my adolescents, about 6 weeks after discharge from 24-hour care, go off their medications. And then it takes them another 6 weeks to tell anyone they have discontinued their medications. So asking our clients about medication, encouraging them to work with their provider with medications. It's some of the things we know that will help, but our patients are terrified to be on medications, a lot of them. And then having a team I trust. I encourage clients to interview their providers. And then I encourage them to, a lot of times when they come in to 24-hour care, they don't want to go back to their team. We're always going to say, yes, you need to go back to that team because you're in a different place now. And so going back to that team, having a team they trust. With adolescents, sometimes, of course, they're not going to trust us no matter what, but I think that becomes critical. So other things with reaching out for support is having a voice, having an opinion. When we look at some of the top triggers for individuals with eating disorders, on the top 10 list is being assertive. So just know for your clients, even being assertive, putting out their needs can be so hard for them. But teaching them that that's going to be a critical part of their recovery. Making new friends. We're going to get to a whole slide on this in a minute, but that can be part of the reaching out for support, is having new friends, joining groups or clubs, whatever it is they need to do to kind of get them out of that eating disorder comfort zone and get them in a new area. So number 4 is letting go of negative body image. So a lot of patients, I think, would put this often as number 1. Even though I've been teaching body image groups for 22 years, I often do not think eating disorders have anything to do with body image. I think it's more about self-image, but we have to be where they're at, and we have to recognize that body image is a big deal for them. I put a couple resources I like a lot, but what my patients say is they always want to change their body and the scale. So we know, again, when we look at the top 10 triggers, number 1 for patients is, they say, the mirror. Number 2 is the scale. So I like to directly talk to my patients about this. Are you planning to weigh yourself? What are you going to do if that number is up? Are you able to not weigh yourself? Are you able to turn that over to your team? So for me personally, for patients that I'm working with that I believe can fully recover, there is no reason I need them to weigh themselves. That should be something their team should do. Now, if I have patients that do not plan on getting better right now, that are not in a great place, they may be weighing themselves. They may be having a family member weigh them. But again, my mindset for those patients is, I'm not looking at a full recovery right now. I'm just trying to keep them safe and at a maintenance level to see if they're okay. The next one is refusing to maintain a normal body weight. So many times my clients say, I'll recover if I can be this size, or if I can weigh this amount. So really exploring that with them. And they say, of course, hating their body. So I like to do a lot of body image assessment work. So that's one reason I put Thomas Cash's book. He's got some really great exercises that you can do with your clients. So I like to look at how body image impacts the people around, the places they go, the poses, the way they sit, the way they pose in pictures, the way they pose in social media, looking at clothing challenges. So we do assessments, and Thomas Cash, again, has a great one in his book where you kind of look at how they hide and camouflage and conceal their body. So we just did a group on this last week where we talk about, are there certain colors they avoid? Will they wear shorts? Do they have to wear multiple layers? Do they have to wear Spanx? You know, the #1 selling product here in the US besides anti-aging cream is like Spanx. What are they doing to camouflage and conceal? And working with them to decrease that. And then cleaning out their closet. I have a lot of patients that keep a variety of their sick clothes that they call them, or I have other patients, and these are their words, their fat clothes. They keep all of these in their closet. I like them to clean out their closets. I want them to start fresh and have clothes that don't trigger them, clothes that they don't remember, well, it used to fit this way. And so really kind of doing some work with that. I suggest that they always do that with someone. I do not like clients to go through and try on clothes by themselves. I like them to get rid of their trophy jeans. If they have any clothes they use to measure themselves, getting rid of that. And then again, just buying some new clothes. Things go in and out of style so often anyway. It's great for them just to get some new clothes so they're not, again, having those body image memories of how it used to fit. Okay, so the next thing with this on negative body image is limiting their opportunities. So I like my patients to really look and recognize their triggers and then measuring their triggers. So another tool you can take out of Thomas Cash's workbook is kind of a list of like triggers and then looking at how we rate our triggers. So did it trigger me to a 10 or did it trigger me to a 3? So that's always progress. I tell my patients, things can still trigger me, but maybe I don't get triggered to a 10 anymore. Maybe I'm only triggered to a 2. And then the duration of the trigger. How long did the trigger last? Did it last 10 minutes or did it last 10 hours or 10 days? And then what did I do with that trigger? Did I do a behavior or did I do something positive? So the goal of recovery is not necessarily to eliminate and avoid triggers, but what do we do when we get triggered and how do we minimize the impact of that trigger on our behavior? So one lesson I had to learn quickly in recovery is for some reason, I felt like I had to put myself in a lot of really difficult situations to prove I could handle it. And so I like to use the analogy of putting my hand on a hot stove. For some reason, it's like, no, I can go back to a full course load of classes. I can go back to working full time. I can be around really hard people. I can go to the gym. I used to purposely put myself on a hot stove. Now, as a recovered individual, I actually go, wow, that's a hot stove. I think I'm not going to touch that. So part of being a recovered person is realizing I don't have to prove anything. I can actually walk away from this trigger. There's some triggers we can avoid, but let's look at those triggers we can avoid. And so again, that's why I think getting on the scale is a trigger our clients can avoid. This is one, for me, I like to turn over to professionals. I don't need my client triggering themselves every day with that. And then looking at avoiding. What are they avoiding in life? When I just ran this group last week, I had a mother in the group and she has 3 small children. She has not ever taken her kids to the pool. And so one of her goals and what we're working on setting these small goals is just being able to be in a swimming suit, so she can take her kids to the pool. So looking at how is this getting in my way? How is this impacting my life? So now we're going to talk about social media, which I've had a lot to say about recently. Now, I have to tell you, when I first started collecting my data on the 10 top things, patients listed social media as a support. For me now personally, I don't think I could have that be a support for my clients. And I think if any of you are aware, I do have an Instagram. It's just Dr. Nicole Hawkins. But if you can look at my post I did this week, I'm basically saying I'm going to leave the platform because it is hard to support a platform that promotes pro-eating disorder material. So if you're not up to speed with everything going on, though, with the whistleblower and the 10,000 pages of documents that were leaked, but they basically found in their own internal documents that Instagram is promoting pro-eating disorder material. So one of the senators even created a fake 13-year-old's account. They liked one pro-eating disorder comment or content, and then the next day that fake 13-year-old's account was flooded with pro-eating disorder material. And I know, during COVID, when my daughter had to come home from college and she was back living in the basement, I know it was horrible for her, but back living in the basement, she was on TikTok. And there was a TikTok video that was a pro-eating disorder video, and she'd never seen one before. And she ran upstairs and she said, Mom, you've got to see this. So we watched it twice. What did that do to her algorithms? Her whole TikTok feed became pro-eating disorder content. So I do know there is value in these platforms for some of our viewers, and it helps them feel not alone. This is what they've said. It gives them connections to people that understand their issues. But I think it's critical that we have to teach our clients to be media literate. We need to talk to them about it. So if any of you have Netflix, I would highly recommend the documentary Social Dilemma. It came out this year. It's pretty relevant. It's pretty up to date. There's a few parts of it I don't like, but it really teaches young kids about algorithms and about their notifications and how to be a little more social media literate. So again, talking to your patients about them, talking to them about pro-eating disorder websites, asking them if they have their own, asking them what they follow. So I really do an assessment with this with my clients, talking to them about this, seeing what they're viewing, seeing what they access, and then of course filters and talking to them about everything that's going on that. And I didn't know if you guys had heard of this term. It's an actual term now, and it's called Snapchat dysphoria. So it's basically this phenomena, and plastic surgeons have seen a 55% increase of clients going in, showing their filtered images and wanting plastic surgery to look like their images they're posting on social media. So the game has definitely changed out there. And so talking to your patients about it, I like to ask my clients too about if they are taking weight off themselves in their pictures. So a lot of my patients do that. They will literally airbrush their pictures down to smaller sizes. So in their minds, they can look ill and look sicker. And for a lot of them, they feel like, well, I don't feel like I deserve help or treatment if I don't look a certain way. And so I do like to talk to them about this, talking to them about all the images and the media and just helping them be a little more aware. Just one study, I do an entire presentation on social media, but I just pulled out a couple little pieces for this. But this study kind of shows it all. And it was basically 20 minutes. So they took two groups of women. One went on Facebook for just 20 minutes. The other got to research this cute rainforest cat. And after just 20 minutes being on social media, women had greater body dissatisfaction. So we know on average, the average college student is spending about 90 minutes on social media a day pre-COVID statistics though. So I don't really have data right now. We just know that the most recent data I have on teenage girls, and that you'll find this a little hard to believe. Teenage girls are connected to technology 19 of the 24 hours a day. That doesn't mean they're on it 19 hours a day, but that means they are picking up their device and checking it within every hour of 19 of the 24 hours. So what does that mean when they're sleeping? That means if they wake up in the middle of the night and their phone is on their nightstand, they are checking it. 19 of the 24 hours. So again, I am so happy that Facebook is launching all these campaigns that they need to have government regulation. They should have been regulating themselves a long time ago, but I think we will see some changes, because I think, you know, Congress, they're going to be stepping in. Okay, number 6 is service. This one was huge for my recovery. A lot of my patients have said this has been really helpful, and we build this in a part of the Center for Change program, is kind of giving back. So this is some quotes my patients have said. Creating meaning in my life through service, volunteering my time, forcing myself to be out of my comfort zone, realizing that I had value and could contribute to others. So when you think about service, and if we go back to number 1, structure and consistency, for so many of my clients, putting service into their routine, even if it's not into their daily routine, but their weekly routine, that can help give them structure. So it could be that they go to the local animal shelter and they walk dogs. It could be what one of my patients just did. She has a lot of anxiety, believe it or not, right? And she crocheted hats for infants in the NICU, and she donated them to the hospital. So she wasn't even, you know, going to the hospital, but every day she reserved 35 minutes of her day and she crocheted hats. And they can be, you know, writing letters to members and service members. So it can be anything that they want to do. Donating to their favorite charity, picking up trash. I just know a group of kids came through my neighborhood this week and picked up leaves, but they still haven't fallen from the tree, so I need them to come back and pick up some more. But anything like that. So here on the unit, we encourage them to leave positive notes for each other, leaving positive notes for staff. The patients have decorated all the nursing doors with notes to the nurses about how much they appreciate them. We have notes to the kitchen staff. So those can be acts of service. And again, it's helping the clients. It's giving them structure. For me, the one way I used it is I didn't feel I was good at anything. When I was in my eating disorder, I literally felt like I was a failure. I felt like I had ruined my life. I felt like I had nothing good to offer. I couldn't even imagine applying to jobs, but I could volunteer. So I volunteered in the emergency room. I volunteered at a homeless shelter. I volunteered at a nursing home. And in that, I also gained skills. And I could also put those on my resume in the future. Even though it was service, I was gaining skills. So for some of my patients that are really struggling with feeling like they have nothing to offer, service can be a great thing. So here's some other things that some of my clients have shared that they do. So tutoring with children after school, donating stuffed animals to hospitals, organizing activities for kids in hospitals, knitting or crocheting blankets, or giving them to homeless shelters, collecting baby clothes, sports equipment, volunteering at a summer camp for children who lost a parent, you know, sponsoring a child living in a foreign country, donating used books. So really kind of exploring this and having your clients set some goals of what they could do with service. Some other ones, delivering groceries, reading to residents in nursing homes, mowing your neighbor's lawn. Here in Utah, we get a lot of snow, and so shoveling walks is a big service project, making birthday cards. So again, brainstorming with your clients, giving them some things to do and having them start doing that. Okay, the next one is spirituality. And, you know, spirituality is not always equivalent to religion. And I know for me, I'm personally not a religious person, but when I think about spirituality, that's a different thing. And so with our patients, this is what they've said: discovering my passions and my interests. Any of you aware of Dr. Ira Sacker? He has a great book out there about passions, and what he really believes is the most important for eating disorder recovery is kind of finding their passions and their interests. And for most of our clients, when they're in the eating disorder and they're depressed, they lose all their passions and their interests. So exploring their spirituality, for a lot of my patients, they'll say when they were in the eating disorder, they stopped going to church, they stopped praying. So for them, simple acts of saying, part of my structure is I'm going to go to church, or I'm going to pray, or I'm going to go be out in nature. So really, whoops, I went too far. Really making sure you're outlining for them what are their goals. So for me, it was, doing good deeds, being out in nature, whatever they define it for them. You're just having them put that into their written plan. These are some goals I want to work on. Okay, healthy relationships. So this is a big one. And so for so many of my clients, they need to make new friendships, new relationships when they recover. And so they'll say, letting go of unhealthy people in my life. This one, I stopped expecting others to change. I have had so many of my clients say, I will not recover until my mom changes. I will not recover until my dad changes, or until my mom even recovers from an eating disorder. So recognizing that they can recover regardless of what happens to the people around them. And then staying away from predatory people. So we do a group where we talk about some of the unhealthy relationships, and we look at if they're in an unhealthy relationship. So we look at, are they in a relationship with a co-addict? Are their friends or their partner or their spouse, do they have an addiction? Do all their friends have eating disorders? And so looking, am I in a co-addict relationship? Am I in a codependent relationship? Am I in a controlling relationship? Do I have someone in my life that is micromanaging me and doing everything for me? Am I in an abusive relationship? And so a lot of our patients are in abusive relationships, or they could have a family member that is abusive. So making sure you're assessing for that, looking for that. And then the final category is kind of what I like to call the knight in shining armor, the person that's the savior, the rescuer, that's going to make everything better. So looking at those relationships, I always believe family therapy is critical. And family therapy could just be with a support person, right? It doesn't have to be a family member, but that's pretty much a requirement here, is that every week patients are in some kind of family support session with someone, and maybe encouraging the family to get in their own individual sessions, to get the partner in their own sessions. So really doing some assessment work of what's going on in the family and their relationships. The good news is, what I like to tell the patients is, if they're in an unhealthy relationship, which most of them are, most of these relationships can improve. The hardest one is the abusive person. The abusive person often is very resistant to therapy. This is the dad that usually gets pretty mad at me and says, I don't have a problem, they have a problem, you fix them. This is the dad that when the client maybe reads their eating disorder auto or their auto to their family member, if they blame or say that anything was caused by the family, this is the family member that storms out of the session. So sometimes the abusive person, it's very hard for them to admit that they have a role in the eating disorder, how the eating disorder is showing up in the family. But everyone else, all the other relationships, I think can definitely be improved, and I encourage my patients to be in family therapy. Also looking at unhealthy environments. So do they have family members that diet? Do they have roommates that have eating disorders or that are dieting? Do they have a lot of friends that have eating disorders? Of course, since I work in a treatment facility, a lot of my patients are all friends together, and then they remain friends together. That sometimes can have them going down the rabbit hole together. And so really encouraging them to get non-eating disorder friends And then looking at, are they putting themselves in a really stressful environment? So many of my clients will tell me, well, I am so behind, Nicole. I'm like behind in school. I have to catch up. So then they're throwing themselves into very difficult school environments, work environments. And then I love to use this example. I have a patient that is trying to recover, and then she works, not Raw Girls, but she works in a vegan food truck. That is not the most supportive environment for her to work in. I have a patient that's trying to recover from her exercise addiction, and she works at a gym. So really trying to look at their environment, look at, is that supportive for their recovery? Even for some of my clients that are nurses that are working night shifts, I get it, and I know the pay differential is great if you work a night shift, but for their recovery and trying to give them that structure and that support, that can be a very hard shift for them to work. And so just exploring that with them and looking at their environment. Okay, number 9 is letting go of perfectionism. So this is a really unpopular group when I do it, but I love to talk about just being average. And that is such a hard concept in today's world. And so patients, this is what they'll tell me, kind of melting down if they make a mistake. They have too high of expectations for themselves, feeling I need to be perfect in my life, feeling I need to catch up because I'm behind. And so what I like to do, and I literally do a group where I have this pie chart. And I show in the eating disorder, how in the eating disorder, it takes up usually about 90% of our day and what we focus on and what we think about. And then I had a little bit of time for school. I did have family, I had a few friends, but the majority of my day was spent either engaging about the eating disorder or plotting or planning of engaging about the eating disorder. So then when I took the eating disorder out, I was left feeling completely empty. There was nothing there. So I had to slowly fill it up with other things. So what I like to tell patients now is I'm not really good at any of those things. You know, I'm a pretty good CEO. I'm a pretty good mom, even though my 13-year-old son would not agree with that. Like, I'm a pretty good mom. I'm a pretty good wife. Like, I'm pretty good at a lot of things, but I'm not exceptional at anything. And so maybe that's the balance that I need in my life, is that I have a lot of things so I can tell them, like, now, like body image and appearance, that's just a teeny little thing. So it doesn't have to make me suicidal if I gain weight, but back in the eating disorder, it sure did. So looking at maybe, wouldn't it be cool if I'm kind of good at a lot of things, but I'm not very good at anything? And that's what I like to teach, that concept of average. And I love Brene Brown stuff. And so I do a lot of assignments for that with patients as well. I like to talk about perfectionism versus excellence and go over that with clients and kind of outline, what does this really look like? And maybe we shouldn't really go with perfectionism. So I like to say I'm a recovering perfectionist because I knew that was going to keep me sick. If I did not let go of that, I would have stayed sick. So the final one I want to talk about is self-care. And I have been talking to my clients about this forever, and I think it is like the critical one too. So I like them to schedule, again, when we go back to number 1, that schedule and that consistency and writing things down. We could be writing in our spirituality. We could be writing in our service. We could be writing in structured time for self-care. We don't wait till I'm completely at a 10 and feeling overwhelmed to say, what am I going to do for self-care? I'm going to add it into my schedule. I'm going to assign it for homework. And so I like to have for my patients an assignment called the 365 positive affirmations. I have them go on websites where they can get ideas, but then they handwrite all 365 positive affirmations, ones that resonate with them. And then they cut them out. I have them put them in a box that they decorate, and they put Mod Podge on it. They make it look all cute. And every day, that is their positive, that's like their mantra for the day, like what they're going to say to themselves. So some other things Of course, journaling, we talked about the affirmations, gratitude statements, calling a friend, coloring, listening to an inspiring podcast, going for a walk. We sometimes need to limit that. They can't go too long and too far. Sitting by running water. There's always a reason doctors' offices have fish tanks and fountains, because people are anxious, and that sound, that really calms us. Watch a sunset. Buy yourself plants or flowers. Meditation, getting a massage, a pedicure, a manicure, a self-soothing kit. So that's the one I wanted to talk about. I do this for an assignment for my clients, just to make their own self-soothing kit. And they can have Play-Doh in there. They can have, essential oils. They can have their favorite candle. They can have lotion. They can have here, and I sleep with one, a weighted blanket. Whatever it is that they have something that they've created themselves, so that unfortunately, if they do get to that 8 or 9, they're kind of pulling that out and they're doing some of that self-soothing for themselves. And then petting an animal, of course, that is a great one. And then yoga. I have a whole post on yoga. For those of you that love yoga, you've known this for a long time, but it is research-wise one of the best activities individuals in recovery can do for themselves. And so those are some kind of areas to focus on. Carrie, I don't know if I have any questions in the pane. Do I have some?
You just have one.
Okay, perfect.
You want me to tell you?
Yep.
Okay. Are you ready, or you want?
I'll just do this slide, and then I can go to the question. So what I like to do with all this information is I like to build patients a parachute. And again, maybe some of these fit for them, maybe all of them fit, but teaching them, like, if we're going to recover, we've got a plan for it. I like to use the analogy of like going on a road trip. If I'm going to go on a road trip to New York and I can't use Google Maps, I'm going to have to sit down and actually plan it. I'm going to have to get out a map. I'm going to have to figure out how long it's going to take me to go on that trip. I need to plan the trip. We need to help our patients plan recovery. Okay, so my final slide, and then I'll try to get to the question. This is another analogy I like to use with patients. So they've written out this whole plan. They have all the 10 elements. We've said they're doing really well. And I like to say that plan is like a blueprint of building a house. And in my recovery, I built 3 houses, and I quickly burnt them all down in behaviors. The nice thing about that written plan is I can get it out. It is still there. The foundation is still there. The blueprint is still there. I can make changes. I can learn from my relapses. So if you're working with patients that have relapsed, I always say, you were golden to me. You tell me what didn't work. You tell me what got in the way. You tell me those hot matches you were collecting that ended up burning down your house. And so I like to always let them know, this plan we just created with all these 10 elements, we can keep adding to it. We can keep adjusting it. This is just the beginning. And so looking at a relapse or a lapse is not the end. We're just going to learn from it. We're going to move on. We're going to keep going. Okay, what's my question? I have one.
The question is how to handle cleaning out or buying new clothes with clients who struggle with binge eating disorder and desire/hope to lose weight in the recovery process.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So I think it's very normal. I just did a group where patients color in if they love, like, dislike, or hate their bodies. And I always tell them that exercise has nothing to do with their recovery. The next worksheet I give them is accept, refuse to accept. Patients don't need to like or love their bodies in order to recover. You're hearing this from the body image teacher. But what I need them to do is accept that this is where my body's at. And right now, if my number one goal is I'm going to recover, I can't change my body. I need to accept where it is. Doesn't mean I like it. I don't even have to love it. But I'm going to accept it. And so buying clothes that I'm comfortable in right now, that are fitting my body and that I can move in well, that is what we want to get them to. But I know that is hard because they're always hoping, right? They're like, I'm stuck in this body that maybe I'm not supposed to be in. And it's accepting that. Well, I recognize I am out of time, but thank you so much. And please know that you can email me if you have any further question, and thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And again, take care. Thank you. Okay.
And just one quick thing, I wanted to just let everybody know, please fill out the evaluation and watch for the follow-up email with instructions regarding taking the post-test and receiving a certificate of attendance. Dr. Nicole Hawkins gave you her email. You can also email cfcwebinar@gmail.com, and we will forward those questions on to her as well. So whichever works best for you. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great day.